Hello again. If anyone's watching, just send me in the chat, just a text in the chat to let me know. Um, thanks. Aha! I see Conrad. Conrad. Oh, I'm gonna no Comrade Mojo. Sounds Russian. I'm probably getting that wrong though. Where are you coming in from, Conrad? You're saying good morning, which makes me think I don't know where you would be. Australia? New Zealand. Okay, cool. I'd ask you how the weather is, but well, yeah. How is the weather down there? I guess it's summertime there. Sorry, this is all new to me. It's a bit weird, but we'll get there. Oh, much like actually no, England today. Here, I'm in London. I'm in London, England, and it was blue skies. A little bit chilly today, but it's been pretty good. We're getting signs of spring, so that's all good. So it says there's 4 people. What on now? I think that includes me. Do you have any questions? It's great that you're joining, and it's weird that I'm just talking and you can text back. But yeah, got any questions or aspirations for this intimate live stream? Right, I'm going to try and share the screen, and let's see what happens if I do this. Okay, so you should now be seeing an image, a Derek Meddings painting of the lunar carrier and lunar module from UFO. And I wanted to show this because in terms of the box artwork, I like this production painting. I don't know if it was done prior to production. I guess so, because it's designs aren't exactly what you see in the series. But I really like this, and I wanted to sort of mimic this in my box top artwork. So this is what I did, sort of in the imaginary what if box top of the lunar module and lunar carrier. And I thought, okay, let's sort of do a version of that that kind of looks like, it's clearly inspired by Derek's original painting, but it's sort of on model, the lower altitude and whatever. But I thought that was just sort of a nice sort of, a nice idea. And I think the painting came out pretty well. It was weird to sort of stage this and get reasonable view of the lunar module and a decent view of the lunar carrier. And Derek's painting, they're further apart, so it's a clear view, but they're much further away. So for the purposes of the box top, I kind of crunched them together a bit just to kind of get a decent composition and also really show off what's there. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute because I don't see any I can't see my text window at the moment. The algorithm randomly showed me your channel, but as a fan of models and Thunderbirds, I really like your work. Oh, great! Well, thank you very much. So, have you seen a lot of the videos? Because there's quite a lot of, I think there's 20 videos now on the sort of imaginary box model kit box artwork. There's sort of a number of those, and they're a little bit random. Some of them sort of have themes, and there's some that are like, very, very, Jerry Anderson or Thunderbirds, and others are a bit more kind of hit and miss based on which ones I'd done. So it can be a bit of a challenge to find if something that you're particularly interested in has been featured in one of the videos. But I'm working on trying to do some sort of a database. I'm going to share the screen again because I think you will be. You haven't gone back in time yet. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, some of the original ones have some, I won't say better known stuff, but it's been some sort of big ticket items, like the Liberator from Blake 7 is in the first one, the Proteus from Fantastic Voyage. I'm trying to remember what else is in there. The truck from the movie Damnation Alley, that kind of amazing, 6-wheeled or 12-wheeled truck was sort of in there in a Tamiya box. So there's some sort of fun stuff in there. But the first artwork I actually did, and just excuse me while I share again. Oops, some of that. So is why is that not working? Share screen, right? So the first sort of artwork I did, crikey, hang on. So the first one of these I actually did was the Red Arrow, which is from Thunderbirds, from the episode Edge of Impact. And I sort of did this because sort of as a kid, I mean, I made, my brother and I, we were sort of into making model kits and airfix kits and stuff. And I think even at a very, very young age, we recognized that the Red Arrow fighter seen in that episode was made out of a Saab Draken kit. Of some sort. And I remember, I don't know how old I was, but I was quite young enough that I couldn't really make models. And my dad, we had our dad make. We went out and bought the Airfix Saab Draken, which, as you can see, it's sort of I mimicked the Saab Draken box, with my box, sort of intentionally, because, as I said, we recognized it was a Saab Draken kit, and then I had my dad sort of made the Airfix version, and I think it's just based on seeing it on TV. I don't remember there were no video recorders or videotapes or anything like that. And I think we had a couple of TV 21 or Thunderbirds annuals, but they didn't have any pictures of the Red Arrow. But we knew it was red, and I think he painted it. Painted it sort of red with a grey underside, and I think a black sort of nose cone. But we didn't have any of the other jets on it either. I couldn't remember that it had those, or we just couldn't do it. So we
the shared screen doesn't work, it's only black.
Oh, that's no good, is it?
You just see it must do something because your picture goes into the corner, but the screen is just.
Okay, thank you. I was just informed that my screen sharing is not working, so that's not good, is it? I can't see your shared image. Oh, right, okay. That's weird, isn't it? Let's try this again. Okay, so now I think you should be seeing a picture-in-picture with the red arrow box top and then me in the corner. Can someone confirm that's what they're seeing? Because it's a little hard for me to tell what I'm seeing, and this is my first time doing it. Okay, great. So yes, as I was saying, so yeah, this is the first one I did. We knew it was the red arrow. Hello, Mark. Thanks for joining. So we made it. I asked my dad to sort of make the kit, and we painted it red with a grey bottom and a black nose, which is, I think, as best we could remember what a what the red arrow plane looked like. But yeah, sort of, I deliberately sort of did a picture of it mimicking the Airfix box, because that's that's what it was. Now, as a point of interest, they didn't use the Airfix kit. They actually used, I think, a Hawk or a Lindbergh, but basically a bigger model, a 1/48 scale kit that was, it's more like about 16 inches long, which is still not big for a film model at all. But yeah, that's sort of what they used. But again, watching it as a kid, it's kind of like, hey, that's we can do that. We've got one of those, which was kind of fun. So that was sort of the first one I did, and I just sort of got to thinking with the whole thing. It was sort of, I started doing artwork, started painting. A lot of the films I sort of grew up with, and the one I can most remember being the example of this was Captain Nemo and the Underwater City, which is a film from 1969. It was shown on TV quite often, but there wasn't a lot of sort of coverage of it. I think I had one photograph of the model sort of sitting in a workshop somewhere, but I always really liked that design. And even in the film, even if you look at the film, it's very kind of dark and murky and a bit kind of, it's all shot dry for wet, so it's like big models hanging on a set with smoke around it to kind of make it look like it's underwater. And it's all a bit sort of murky and you can't really see it, and I just thought, this is such a great looking thing. Sort of, I want a great image, a great clear image of this thing, and nothing that I could find sort of really existed. So I thought, all right, I'll sort of paint something for myself, just to sort of have it. And also in doing that, you kind of you have to sort of get in there and dig around and actually see what the thing really looks like. Because if it's only ever seen from one angle, you're like, what does it look like from the back, and what does the bottom of it? So it's sort of a fun little sort of archaeological exercise sometimes. So I think it's fun for me to paint those ones that are lesser known but are of interest to me. I mean, really the sort of things I grew up with. Yeah, I'll just see this note. Yeah, so yeah, the I can't remember. You said 1/4 scale engines. Yeah, it could be on the red arrow. I don't recall. I know there's several different kits, and in one of the videos, I think it's even more kit bashing, which is the ones that has a lot of aircraft in it. It kind of goes through the ratio of a 1/96 scale B-58 gives you the jets you need for the helijet, which is a 1/32 scale Husky, and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite a bit of alchemy, it seems like. But yeah, I sort of got into doing these paintings of sort of lesser known things, and I thought, and wouldn't it have been great if there'd been model kits of this stuff? I certainly would have snapped it up. And I remember, you'd go to the hobby store, the model shop, Beatty's, and you wouldn't necessarily know what was what something was, you would just sort of see the artwork, the fantastic Roy Cross artwork, and say, "Oh, that thing looks cool. I want to kind of get that." So yeah, so that sort of got me into it. I'm going to try sharing the screen again and just sort of go through a couple of the other box tops that really, where I really sort of the subject matter was the, hang on a second, oops. The subject matter felt very similar to what was, okay, hang on. Live TV. All right, why can't I? Oh, there it is. Aha, that's because I was being very clever and then forgot. Okay, so you should now be able to see the lunar carrier again, but let's go to this. So another one that is a Joe 90 episode, and I'm sorry if this is repeating some of what's in the videos, but I'll try and give you a couple of little extras to make it worthwhile. But yeah, there's an episode of Joe 90, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, Joe 90 is a kid who works for the World Intelligence Network and can be given the brain pattern, the knowledge basically of anyone whose brain they can record, and that gets put into Joe, and he can then sort of act out and perform all the functions that these people can do. So, and this was one where I think there's a hijack or somebody puts a bomb on this hovercraft and sort of asks for ransom money or whatever, which is quite heavy going for a kids show, really. But and then so the Airfix SRN4 hovercraft is an absolute sort of classic, and I think me and many people are delighted to hear that Airfix are re-releasing this as a vintage classic, although it probably won't be in the white plastic. But anyway, so but I thought this is such a classic kit and such a classic image, with the cars coming out and all the guys sort of, the crew and people sort of getting it all ready, and the passengers. I mean, it's just fantastic. There's so much going on, and it's just so beautifully painted by Roy Cross, of course. So I wanted to sort of, mimic that. My painting is not nearly as good, but it's the same angle. It's got the same sort of setup, the same motion and everything, which is pretty interesting. Well, it's not interesting. It was kind of just fun to sort of match that as best I could. Now, because these things, it's fun to paint the craft, and like I was saying, it's sometimes difficult to know exactly what they look like because you only ever see it, sort of from certain angles. But fortunately, in this episode, there's the shots of the actual hover liner itself, going out to sea and turning around before it goes out and all that stuff. But there's also on board, the hoverliner is a model. It's meant to be a model of the hoverliner for display purposes, whatever. And that's where the guys put the bombs. There's lots of shots of Joe and people standing around this model, which is the visual effects model pre-dirtying down and everything. So it all looks nice and pristine, like a travel agent window sort of model. And you get to see some different angles of it there, which is super, super helpful. So a couple of things that just for the nerdiest of nerdy people. So here, let's see if this works. Well, my computer's going pretty slow. Oh, well, there we go. All right, so this is very small, it's just a very small part of the painting. Oh, but oh dear, this is a bit painful. Sorry, folks. Let's try that again. Okay, so in amongst all these cars in the parking lot, I painted very badly, but again, it's small, it's my defense, a version of Sam Louver's car, that's what they always use when they're sort of driving around these places. I thought that was just fun to have that in the car park there. And then back here, I'd actually forgotten I did this, but I was looking at this picture for something else. And if we're patient, Okay, so there's Scott Tracy or somebody. These guys, Troy Tempest and Phones, Captain Blue, Captain Scarlet. I think that's Mac, and then Joe there, and I guess that's Sam in like a weird sort of Indiana Jones hat. Um, but yeah, again in the image you don't really see them. They're just people, but they're just blobs. Give it a bit of life. But I thought that was kind of a fun little Easter egg, as I guess they say these days. I'll stop sharing that. Yeah, well, the SRM4, the Vintage Classic is coming out, so it should be at a reasonable price, probably more reasonable than one of the old ones on eBay. Okay, so I'm going to just go to another screen share and talk about one of the other boxes. Let's see. So this was a hopefully you can see the Airfix Heracles box. And again, a lot of these are Airfix boxes because, again, that was a lot of what was on the shelves in Beatties when I was a kid, sort of growing up. So this is Skythrust. This is another plane from Thunderbirds. And this is, again, one of the earlier boxes I did. And I didn't put on here, from Thunderbirds or Jerry Anderson or anything like that, because I thought it was kind of fun that they just looked, it would just look like a plane, like, hey, what's that thing? Maybe on the side of the box it would say kind of what it was. But with this one, I I thought, well, it's an airliner, the glamour of airline, and in the story it has a sort of fashion show on it, so it really is sort of meant to be that rekindling that idea of the glamour of flight. So I thought, and it's silver, like like the Heracles, the Henley Page plane that Airfix did a long time ago. And this is sort of flying over Egypt and the desert. And again, in the episode, the Fireflash, the Skythrust is sort of flying over the desert at one point. They're going to reroute it. So I thought I'd do it over pyramids as well. And just sort of, as a nod to, hey, this is an airliner of the future. And this is an airliner from way, way back. So that was, a little bit of fun there. The Hercules, again, anyone who made Airfix kits, sort of, I remember this was like, it felt like this was the biggest kit ever when it came out. And something that I thought would be I'd always loved this box, and it's great in the kit. You get, I think, the Land Rover and the rocket and the transporter thing. You actually get that, which is pretty cool. So I thought I would sort of mimic, and not exactly, but it's the same. It's the same perspective, basically. If you can see, it's on the same sort of tarmac, runway with some grass around it. There's vehicles driving out much the same way. So pretty much as much as you can kind of, make this look like a similar sort of feel. This is sort of what I did. And again, in the kit, you got I think you got a sentry as well who's standing with a guard dog. So you can kind of see him back there again, very blobby. Look at the dog, he's just sort of scratched in there. But I was quite happy with how this painting came out, to be honest, because I really did want to sort of make it feel like that Hercules box, just sort of the Jerry Anderson UFO version. And of course, it's a kit, you get some mobiles with it, which would be super fun. And these effects in the show are so good. They're so sort of believable. So I wanted to sort of paint this as realistically as possible. Still have it be recognizable for what it is, that sort of scene. And and yeah, and then sort of pay homage, whatever, to that Hercules kit. This guy, incidentally, the guy with the paddles, I painted him for the box top of the Dove lifting body from the movie Doppelganger, which was a Jerry Anderson movie made just before UFO, and I kind of cut and pasted him from that and stuck him in there just for scale. I don't know that the scale is right, but it works for the composition. I think, just having an actual person there and this thing, and then the mobiles and guys back there, I think kind of gives it a nice feel. What else have we got? The red arrow. We talked about the lunar module. There's the Subdraken. There's that again, and then the other one that was sort of very closely matched is this. I wanted to do the sort of crash tenders or the rescue emergency services from London Airport. So this is kind of an imaginary scene, maybe in Trapped in the Sky, when the elevator car crashes into that sort of unknown, or that sort of just parked aeroplane. Maybe this is sort of that scene on what's going on, but I wanted it to make it look like the sort of the companion or sort of my version, the Thunderbirds version of the RAF emergency set that they did. So it's got an ambulance, it's got a fire tender, it's got a plane on fire, it's got other sort of emergency services equipment sort of standing by or coming in. So again, even though the composition isn't the same, I wanted to kind of give it that same feel. A little, again, not quite an Easter egg, but this is London Airport, the control tower that's quite recognizable, I think, from anyone who watches the show. And then I put back here a couple of fire flash hangers, and you can even see on the side it says fire flash, just because, why not? This was again one of the earliest ones I did, and I didn't put any figures in there because I felt like, well, it's Thunderbirds, so you wouldn't really have figures, so I wasn't really sure what to do. As I sort of started doing more of these, I got more comfortable with the idea of, no, let's paint these like they're real things with real people, sort of operating the stuff to really sort of show it off. Sharing. Okay, lots of questions coming in. Right, sorry guys, I'll figure out a way where I can share my screen and see it, and also have you see it and see these. Question, can I see? Okay, the red arrow, blah blah blah. Did they try? 704. Do you have a professional background in art design or in this hobby? No, and no. I've always drawn, since I was a kid. I always sort of drew, and like I said, I would make sort of model kits, and I would scratch build some stuff, and sort of top of this you can see up here in the top left corner. I don't know if you can see that. That's sort of a scratch built ship that I designed, just that's a whole other video what that's for, what that was for. But yeah, so I've always sort of drawn. I mean, I did art at school, and I also did something they called design technology, that was kind of like building things. And I think my project for the year was I sort of built a sort of a camera stand thing that was supposed to help with doing sort of home movies. It didn't really work as planned. But I worked in animation. I've worked in animation since the late 80s. So I've worked with a lot of, really incredible artists that are both inspirational in what they can do, and also incredibly intimidating from what they can do. So if you're like me and you've got like a, half decent skills, you kind of like, oh, well, my stuff's not nearly as good as that. But since being away from that, that's sort of when I really, started to do more painting sort of for myself. And thanks to the wonders of the internet, the internet isn't always great, but it is great for sort of being a showcase and connecting people and things like this, of course. So, getting the stuff out there, and although I was doing a lot of the paintings for myself, having other people see them and respond positively, or even just comment on the subject matter and like, hey, what is that thing? And it's, oh, that's Thunderbird 2. It's from this TV show. You should watch it. You know, and so turning people onto some of that stuff has been great. So yeah, I mean, I'm sort of, I did a bit of art at school. I've I know I've absorbed a lot through osmosis just by being around really, really great artists and sort of film makers. And I'm also very into sort of film and visual effects. And I think a lot of my sort of painting technique, if you like, that sounded really pretentious, part of my technique, um, comes from sort of matte paintings and the way matte paintings certainly used to be done for films, where they were basically, trying to make something look like reality, extending out a sort of partial set. Nowadays, most of them are done sort of with 3D models and 3D lighting, and the actual matte painting itself doesn't really exist. But the stuff that Albert Whitlock, Peter Earnshaw, those guys were really sort of at the forefront in the 50s and 60s. And then, the stuff that ILM were doing, like The Last Shot in Raiders of the Lost Ark is a beautiful matte painting. And if you look at Willow, which is not the greatest film, but probably has the best sort of collection of matte paintings you'll ever see. It's absolutely fantastic. But if you look at those, that sort of artwork, it's sort of very scratchy and very not defined. And it was interesting in some of the places I worked, even in animation, you would do a matte painting because it's more economical than building and lighting and all that. For a real set, and some of the people would sort of come from like a fine art, art school, art graduate background, and there'd be beautiful illustrations, but they were almost too good. The paintings were too good. They didn't sort of have that loose sort of sense of reality, and it just sort of sometimes just blocks of color instead of sort of painting in the details. So I'm not an artist. It's good enough for me to sort of convey some of the stuff I want to do. But yeah, I do. Yeah, so I paint everything in Photoshop. I mean, I have painted actual paintings with with paint. I did a lot of stuff with enamel paint just because I was familiar with enamel paint from making model kits way back when. And it was nice to paint with in a weird way because it's very, what you put down pretty much goes right over whatever you had there. So if you painted something black and you paint over it in white, so long as the paint was dry enough, it kind of would cover pretty well. So from that technique, I guess it was sort of like oils in that way. But yeah, I sort of got out of doing it. I didn't really have the time. And then when I sort of got a bit more time and got back into it, digital painting and Photoshop sort of then existed. This was sort of Photoshop came in late 80s, early 90s. And I did, like probably everyone, first time I got it, I did like photo montages and stuff. But it was when, like I said, I got a bit more time, so sort of mid, like 2010 or so, I got, maybe a bit before that, I got a Surface Pro tablet, which is about, 10, 12 inches maybe, sort of A4 size, pretty much 11 by 17, and with a stylus where you can actually just draw directly on the screen, which had always sort of been a bit of a holy grail, I think. With, again, going back to some of the animation work, that didn't go digital until people could do that, until they could actually use a stylus like a pen or a paintbrush and actually draw on by hand. When they were doing things with a mouse and trying to paint beautiful vistas, it was like chalk and cheese. Yeah, so right about sort of mid 2010s or so, I got a Surface Pro and I had Photoshop on it, and it was small enough that you can just kind of take it with you anywhere. So you didn't have to like, I'm going to my art, to a special place. You didn't have to set up an easel. You didn't have to get the paints out. You could just do something right there and then stop, and then come back to it, and it would all just be there and saved. And that just really, worked really well for me. And I think because I'd done some painting, but not a whole lot, I didn't have that kind of relearning curve that I think some people, have, who have been painting, that then sort of start painting digitally. But yeah, I sort of paint everything sort of, I say by hand digitally. So it's all done, just with a stylus like this, and just sort of there. And sometimes I use it sort of like a pen, like in some of those pictures you saw. It's a bit scratchy, and that's sort of intentional, because sometimes a couple of quick scratchy lines just gives you a definition. But if you look at it, like that dog in that picture, looks terrible, but far away, it sort of works. It's a cheap and cheerful way. You're not painting it. You're not giving it all the detail. You're not then, making sure the color looks right, sort of back in the distance. You can just sort of draw it as you would with a pencil or whatever, the right colored pencil. The right color. And again, working digitally, I do work in layers. I don't do everything just on one layer. I do work in layers where it makes sense. Normally, when I'm sort of going to do something which could really F up the painting, like helicopters or planes with propellers is a big one. You have that option of another layer. So it's like, great, this is going to be transparent. It's going to have that sort of look. So I'll put this on another layer so I can mess around with it, and then what you see through it, I'm not going to have to keep repainting everything you see through it until I get the opacity right. I can treat it as a separate level, kind of double expose it in, at a percentage, until it looks basically right. And then I'll go in and sort of paint the sort of the glints and the spin and the yellow trim around the edge and all that sort of stuff to kind of make it look right. But you sort of have that option of at least doing something and then undoing or peeling it back, or again with rotor blades, they've got to be a perfect circle, but that isn't, what I mean. It's got to be a perfect circle at exactly the right angle to look like it's attached to the front of the plane, which is really really difficult to do. I mean, if you're drawing it, you'd have French curves and all those sort of gadgety things to sort of get it right. But again, doing it digitally in layers just gives you that ability to go back and sort of do it again, or try it out, and just maybe squeeze it and stretch it a little bit. I try not to do much of that, but I do it where it makes sense. I mean, I'm just sort of after the end result, so I'm not looking to make my life harder than than it needs to be. And again, I just don't really have the skill to do a lot of that, so I just kind of take what will work, and and just sort of do that. So yeah, I really expected something like this when watching the less developed portions of your paintings, but I'm not sure. The less developed portion. Yeah, I mean, yeah, everything you've seen on the channel is painted digitally. And yeah, again, there are bits that are very, very loose and very sort of scribbly. And that's sort of, intentional. It's not the focus of the painting, and it's probably a bad habit I've gotten into. But yeah, you don't want to have the correct amount of detail everywhere. Maybe because then it'll sort of draw your attention, or it's harder to get your attention in the right place. But yeah, sometimes it's weird. I mean, I don't know about other people, but when I've sort of done something, I have to like, okay, that's done, and then go and sleep on it or walk away from it, because either you're tired of looking at it and you kind of can't see it anymore, or a lot of times you just think, oh, it's just terrible. It didn't come out the way I wanted. And one example of that was I did a painting of the Sentinel, the USS Sentinel from Thunderbirds, that people have been commenting like, "Oh, do the Sentinel," and I kind of, part of me didn't want to do it just because, it's the thing that shoots down Thunderbird 2. So, but also, so I didn't for a while, and then I did paint it, and I really didn't like it. I really didn't like the way it came out. It was sort of the angle. Everything about it was what I wanted it to be. It was the right angle. It was, I just didn't like it, and I left it, and I didn't put it in a video for a long, long time. And then I sort of went back and looked at it, and it was like, oh, it actually looks quite good. So I don't know if that was just time being away from it, and it was something I'd worked on a lot. I'd probably overworked it, trying numerous ways to kind of get the ocean to look good. Maybe see if I can pull that up. This could be a bit risky. Let's just, so you get to that sort of point where you kind of can overwork things a bit too much. we're seeing behind the curtain, my horrible desktop. Anyone, if you like clean computers and clean work areas and all that stuff, do not look at my computer at all, because it's horrendous. I know it's horrendous. I know how it should be done. I just can't do it. Where are we? Sentinel, Sentinel. Where are you? Yeah, like this is not organized at all, as you can see. Oh, there it is. Okay, so you can see there's 3 of them there. Final 2, final 3. So there's final, which was the first one I did, which, you know, it's not, it's pretty good. It's kind of got a hint of like a sunlight there. Looking at that, I kind of like it. I don't like this at all. I don't like the way all this splashing looks on the front and back. Let's just go to the final. And again, you're not sure, so you save different versions, right? Because you're not sure if you go back to it, it's going to look better. So I prefer this one. I'm looking at it now. My knee-jerk reaction is a bit ugh. But you know, I like the fact that the ocean's got some waves on it, and it's got some scale, and the ship has some scale, and the missile. I like the fact the missile breaks frame. It's kind of gimmicky, but you know, and the wake looks kind of okay. I mean, it's difficult. It's a, you know, marine art, as I think it's called, is probably some of the toughest stuff out there, and this is definitely not a very successful version, and it's definitely got some of that sort of scratchiness to it. One of the challenges here was that you only ever see this thing in the show in profile. You never see it from above. And I think in the video I acknowledge that I think there's a cutaway drawing that I think Graham Bleethman did. Graham Bleethman's an artist who does a lot of Jerry Anderson artwork, and he sort of did a video of it at that side, at that angle. So I kind of, you know, looked at that, and someone had scratch built it, and so there's a few sort of different interpretations mixed in there to kind of get a what was I saying? Yeah, just to sort of get a decent angle. But yeah, so but that was sort of, again, one of the sort of advantages of, I guess, having it done digitally. You can kind of leave it and sit for a while. But I think it's also, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling here, but it's also a bit of a curse because you can do layers. I think with that Sentinel painting in particular, there was what was I going to say? You know, it can get really mushy. It can get really kind of mushy and like, oh, let's put some atmosphere in, and let's put some spray in, and let's put a bit more spray in, and let's put some sunlight. Oh, let's put another bit of sunlight. Oh, if there's sunlight on the water, maybe the ship should be in shadow. And you end up putting layer upon layer upon layer, just trying to find something that you're kind of happy with. You know, and sometimes you just have to say, forget it, you know, scrap it, walk away, which I think is what I did. I think when I did go back to that painting, one of the times I did go pretty much strip it right down and sort of start again. Oh, yes. So hopefully people can see me currently. Sorry if the sharing screen is not really working that well. Yeah, yes, I'm reading your comments, Mark. Thank you. Yeah, enamels are, yeah. I don't miss them. I don't miss the smell. That's for sure. Takes forever to dry. Yeah. Not everything should be sharp and defined. Yeah, the eye should be drawn to the main subjects. I think you can probably do that and still paint the stuff you don't look at maybe a bit better than the way I do it sometimes. I think I do a bit scratchy and a bit scribbly sometimes, but you don't really, I think you don't really see that certainly on the first look, and if you really start looking at it, you can kind of see it. And I think in some ways it's, you know, that's a style, I guess. I'll call it a style. Okay, so Comrade Emojo, still only seeing the Saab Draken, really? Yeah, I mean, Graham Bleethman, I mean, he's got his own style, and he's just painted so much stuff. I actually got to meet him. I went to there was a Thunderbirds convention, or not convention, rather, a little display in a museum sort of in the area where the show was made in Slough, and he was there, and he was, signing pictures and stuff, and, he's sort of like a celebrity in the sort of Anderson fandom world, and it was, he goes, "Oh yeah, I know who you are," kind of thing. I sort of introduced myself. He goes, "Oh yeah, I've seen your stuff," kind of thing, which was kind of nice. Um, so yeah, he's a lovely guy, and he does a lot of other stuff as well, but obviously he sort of made a name for himself doing Anderson, related paintings and cutaways, and which is good because he knows a lot about the show, so you can actually sort of do these things. And he puts a lot of Easter eggs in his paintings. You'll often see a thing like Thunderbird 2 landing at an airport, and there's fire flash in the background, and then there's the RTL 2, and then there's lots of little things you can kind of look at, which is kind of nice to see that stuff. So at the moment, yes, you can only see me. You can see my Eagle transporter back there. These are models my brother made, a beautiful Mark 9 Spitfire, the 24 scale. That's this is really tripping me out. This, crikey, that's the Proteus from Fantastic Voyage, heavily modified 1/32 scale kit. Thunderbird 3, Thunderbird 2, Joe's car. Yeah, that's doing my head in. Any other questions? Hopefully this is kind of sort of a bit interesting. I don't know. I don't often talk about it, so I'm probably rambling on a lot. So yeah, I'm just going to scroll back and see if there's any other questions that I've missed. Yeah, taking a break. Yeah, I mean, this is a question for Mark. I'm going to mispronounce your last name, Mark. So Mark, he contacted me, and I did a couple of. He bought a couple of the kit boxes from me, which is fun. And he showed me some pictures of some models he made, which are really, really nice, really nice. So yeah, Mark, there's a question to you. Where do you get your research from? Do you go basically from the shows themselves? Do you look at because I know sometimes there's publicity stills that were done at the time where you get better angles, different angles at least of the craft, and then and obviously color. That's kind of where you get that from. What is your favorite Thunderbird? Well, I'll give you two guesses. Yeah, Thunderbird 2 is my favorite, as I think probably a lot of people's. I will say though, I mean, for all sorts of reasons, I mean, it just looks great. It just looks beautiful. Certainly that original model that you see in the in the launch sequences, and people don't know, through the course of filming they went through a bunch of models, and just for different shots you need different sizes, and practicalities of filmmaking. But that original model they did with its original paint job is absolutely beautiful. It's the shape of it and the detail on it. I mean, it's exquisite. It's fantastic. So it just looks really, really good. And the fact that it always did everything. It brought everything to the rescue. So contextually, it has, it just has a lot of oomph behind it. But yeah, Thunderbird, I love Thunderbird 3. There is something just so elegant about it. It's just beautiful. It's like, I just love it. Just the proportions of it, just everything about it is just absolutely, rocking. It's a shame we didn't do more, but it's like the sort of the one of the beautiful girls, who, she doesn't have a great personality, but she's really just beautiful, just can't take your eyes off her. So I was going to go into my tangent about the Spice Girls and the 5 Thunderbird machines. If anyone comments on that, I will give you that little slice of my brain. I like them all. Well, not Thunderbird 6, but I don't count that one. No, Thunderbird 6 doesn't count. I'm not a fan of the 2 movies Thunderbirds are going Thunderbird 6. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I like them all. I mean, Thunderbird 4, I mean, they're all good. Even Thunderbird 5, which doesn't get much of a look in because it didn't, it didn't move. It never went anywhere, and they didn't really shoot it more than I think there's about 4 or 5 shots of it. Yeah, so okay, so Mark replied, yeah, so yeah, anything you can get your hands on. The fact that Medding's often used side shots helps a lot. Yeah, it does. You get good plan views of a lot of the things. And again, because in a couple of the paintings I did, because some of the fighter planes, I think in the case of the planes that you see in the Cham Cham that shoot down the RTL2, because that's largely based on a starfighter kit. It's built out of a starfighter kit. I got and you only in the show you only ever see them, from the side. I think they take off from the side, they fly along, but I found a picture of a starfighter sort of to use as a basis of an angle, sort of looking at it sort of nose on, and then adapted it with the changes that they made for it. But I think I totally lost my train of thought. Yeah, so just sort of seeing those, having them based on real things, sometimes gives you a little bit of extra reference. Although, the kits, especially some of these kits that were back in the 50s and 60s, didn't always look exactly like the real thing. I think somebody commented on one of the videos that the canopy on the Red Arrow plane, I think you can tell which version of the kit they used based on the shape of that canopy, because it's kind of the wrong shape. And I think in my picture, I based it on a regular Saab Draken canopy, and it should have been more I can't remember, it's either the Hawk or the Lindbergh one. But yeah, specifics of actual kits do come into place. I'm actually building an alternative universe fleet called Condor. Okay, cool. In the Jerry Anderson Medding style, I guess. I think 5 got more airtime in the intro. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think I counted it up. Or actually, there's I think it's the Filmed in Super Marionation channel, which have done all this great work finding and sort of curating some film that was found, lost film of Thunderbirds, outtakes and different cuts of the episodes when they were 25 minutes instead of 50 minutes and that sort of stuff. And they sort of compiled all the shots of, I think, the different launches, and I think the shots of Thunderbird 5. And I think there's basically the shot in the title sequence, the shot when Thunderbird 3 comes in to dock with it, the close-up where it docks, and then I think another shot where Thunderbird 3 backs away and flies off. And that's it. That's all they shot. And then I think there's a couple of shots in the films that are different. And I did find there's a one of those commercials they did for, I think, the Lion's Mate. It's either the breakfast cereal or Lion's Mate ice lolly. I think it's an ice lolly that has Thunderbird 5 in it, and it's the real Thunderbird 5, and it is a different shot of it. It's not a great shot. It's pretty dimly lit. A lot of it's in shadow, but it's like, okay, that's another 20% of footage of Thunderbird 5 to sort of add to the mix. Echo base helps. I'm present with the Zombite fighter. The fact that it's very much, Starfighter helps a lot. Yeah. Didn't see much of 5, but its importance was always clear, and the others would have been stuck without it. Yeah, it's funny in some of the later episodes, like I think, like Danger Ocean Deep. It's like they were not trying to give it something to do, but they had, the Brains goes up there to get a recording. I think so. Yeah, it's of some radio messages that have interference on them, and he goes up to Thunderbird 5 because it's got the best reception, of anything that they'll get, which I always thought was really cool. It was a good way to sort of include it, and you got to see Thunderbird 3 because they have to go up there. And the other thing I thought was really, a couple of other things I thought were really neat about it in Cry Wolf, which is the episode with the 2 kids sort of playing at being international rescue, and they're kind of playing and like, oh, I'm trapped, calling international rescue, and then these little toy radios that had limited range. But Thunderbird 5 picks it up. It picks up the fact that that's a call for help to international rescue. And I thought, oh, it's really good. It's because that's how powerful it is. It can pick up any sort of message, and I guess we assume it has some sort of computer in there that probably highlights any messages that have the word, rescue, international rescue, danger, whatever, in there. And actually, in the first episode, I don't know if you see this again, but in the first episode, you see sort of the bank of computer equipment, whatever it is, and it's got loads of different languages of different sort of stuff coming in, and maybe it translates some. I don't know. I think it's a bit sort of untapped exactly what Thunderbird 5 did, but in some ways that was good because it was like, wow, it's massive, and you only ever see this one sort of room of it. It was just sort of implied the rest of it was kind of filled with, just trackers and computers and stuff, which back in those days were pretty big as well. But yeah, and then in the new show they did, that Thunderbirds I'll Go show, Thunderbird 5 was kind of doing all sorts of stuff. But there are 3 view shots of TB1 to 5. Oh right, there are 3 of TB1 to 5 that were shared with toy producers and such. Use them a lot when working on my models. Yeah. Those pictures that were done. Mark, as I said, builds a lot of Thunderbirds models. There was some, I think it was in the original publicity pack for the show. Maybe they did pretty much orthographic views of all of those original models. So front, back, side, top, bottom. I think pod in, pod out. Thunderbird 2, Thunderbird 1, wings in, wings out. And they're those original models, which to me are the best looking ones, and sort of probably the definitive versions. So yeah, those stills are very, very handy. And again, because of the way the show's shot, there is a lot of profiles, at least, of the different things. Yeah. All right. This is number 5. Yeah, a lot of the toys weren't good. Although, I mean, that's true. Although I think, and I haven't seen a lot of these firsthand, but I've seen a couple of stills. I think by the time they got to Captain Scarlet, I think they actually gave the manufacturers what some of the toys, some of the models, for them to look at. There's a quite large scale Spectrum Patrol car, the red pointy car, that looks absolutely fantastic. It looks just like the real thing. And the Thunderbird 4, the J.R. Rosenthal Thunderbird 4, that sort of had wheels and drove along and was supposed to go in the water with a little propeller on the back. Outside of those things, the actual shape of that toy looks fantastic. It's beautiful. It looks just like that sort of original model. It looks more like Thunderbird 4 than some of the models they used in the show, for whatever reason. What else? The future present is very much less hovercrafts and monorails than imagined by Jerry Anderson. Yeah, and I think the world is a little poorer for it. I think. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's one of the things about the the show was sort of made at that time, wasn't it? Where things had sort of, science was going ahead leaps and bounds. I mean, you think when it was made, the First World War had only been over for 20 years, and jets had just come in, and they just put someone into space, and they were going to the moon. I mean, there was a level of hovercraft. I don't know when the hovercraft was invented, but I feel like that was pretty new. And yeah, swing wing technology was kind of being sort of talked about. I think these are probably badly wrong facts, but just generally, I think there was that sort of scientific, advancement, and coming out of the fact that the war and things are sort of on the up again. You just feel that sort of optimism, and I think part of the beauty of Thunderbirds is because it's puppets and a very thoroughly realized world, you don't question it. You don't say, oh, would a monorail really work? I don't know, probably not. Well, it looks like it does, and they're able to do it with enough production value that you believed that these things all existed, whether it was done with puppets and a set or a miniature and whatever. It all sort of worked together. And I think, and always said, like, if you in Thunderbirds, if you had someone who was in a burning building, they could just have the puppet in the building and set it on fire, and you got a shot of someone who really looks like they're in a burning building. Whereas, flip the channels to The Man from U.N.C.L.E., another quality show made at that time, people in a burning building, you might get like a flame bar in the bottom of the screen, maybe, or a bit of smoke superimposed over the top of it. And I'm like, well, they're not really, they're not really in danger. But as a kid, sort of watching Thunderbirds, it's all real. It's all really happening. There's no, there's no sort of trick photography, as it was called. It was all sort of real, and that, and you feel that in the. It gives it a credibility. But if it's there on screen, clearly it's possible, because it is in some weird way. What does Mark say? Part of the fun for me is to be very critical about the real-world effectiveness of the designs. Looking good does not mean it would work in reality. Well, yeah, probably, but who knows? Who knows? And again, I think it's part of again, sort of looking at, it's hard to talk about Thunderbirds and not sort of mention the other Anderson shows, but I think there's a balance to me. There's a happy medium in Thunderbirds of a level of sort of fantasy and outrageousness, if that's a word, in things like the Sidewinder and even the Fireflash with its wingtips that fold down and the engines on the tail and the pilots are in the tail rather than the front, which is all kind of like, wow, that's kind of crazy. There's that sort of level of flamboyance, if you like. But it also, again, it looks credible enough, and the stories are credible enough that you kind of buy into it. That I think, you look at the shows, you look at Stingray, for example, and it's very fanciful, very fantasy. Lots of the sort of the underwater craft just look very sort of just very fantasy. And Captain Scarlet on the other side feels a lot less. Just a lot more sort of matter of fact in a way. It's I get into a discussion with some of the other fans, about this whole thing about like, well, Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet sort of all, Stingray, they all exist in the same time. They're part of the same universe, and that came from the TV21 comics that were around at the time, where they wanted to have comic strips that could kind of cross over, which is a fun idea, and all the rest of it. But in terms of the actual canon of it, no, Thunderbirds does not take place at the same time period as Captain Scarlet, regardless of whatever dates may be shown in the shows. Captain Scarlet clearly says 2068. There's an episode of Thunderbirds where it does say it's 2026. But outside of that, Captain Scarlet, they make a big deal about the most advanced army vehicle that they've had to date, which is basically this tank called the Unitron. It's this tank that drives around, and it's like, this is it, guys. Thunderbirds, the cutting edge, high power, army vehicle, top of the line, is the Sidewinder, which walks along and has giant claws on the front and rips trees out of the ground. I mean, that those two things do not exist in the same world. The world where a tank, is, that's not to the same level of advancement and ambition and, excitement, as the Sidewinder. It's probably more realistic. It's more credible, but not nearly as much fun. And anyway, so clearly they're just not in the same world. But and likewise, again, to this point, there's a monorail in Captain Scarlet. I think we see it once in an episode, and it sits, it sits on top of a track. There's the track is there, and the train sort of sits on top and goes along, which is probably how you'd really make a monorail versus the one in Thunderbirds, where all the track is hung up in the ground on these giant sort of like lampposts, and then the train hangs down from those and hurtles along, which would be a nightmare to actually make in reality and have it be workable and safe and whatever. But it looks fantastic. It just looks really, really good. So So, so yeah, I think that's a happy medium, and I think, again, because it's puppets, you get away with it, it's like, because it is puppets and you do see it there, and it's clearly, well, it clearly works. It's not like if it was a live action thing and you had to cut to a model of a train going along, you're like, "Well, yeah, look, it's a model." So clearly it's not, it probably doesn't really work that way, whereas Thunderbird, you buy into it. Um, Good example, the Fireflash, um are too far. So Mark's an engineer, I guess. The Fireflash, the engines are too far of the thrust line. The fairings of the wheel assemblies are very bad for supersonic flight. Wrong proportions, but overall it looks incredible. Yeah, I think even like those little sort of like beetle sort of pod things that open where the wheels are in the back, I think they protrude beyond the back of the wheel. So I think when it actually takes off, those would scrape along the ground if it could even, get up that way. But yeah, it just looks fantastic, the Fireflash, and the fact it's got, people, it's got lounges in the wings, and people can sit in the wings and look out, and the pilots are in the tail. I mean, and it's gorgeous, and it's just good, and it's a double decker. It's what I found out. It's called a double bubble fuselage, where you've got like two, instead of just being a round fuselage, it's like two rounds sort of intersecting, because it's got two decks in the fuselage. I mean, I'd love to see, I thought about making one time one of those sort of like aircraft, safety, please put on your seatbelt videos of like for the Fireflash, so you can actually sort of see some of those sort of interiors and the rows and rows of seats and the double decks and all the rest of it. I think there's a cutaway in, I think it's in a TV 21 that actually gives a pretty good idea of the size of it. I mean, it's huge as well. I mean, it's like 300 feet long, something. I do like the fact that, talking about the engines being on the back in the episode where it crashes on the sea and it sinks down. They do actually they go to the effort in the effects of, if this is the tail, it does sink by the tail first, so that's where the weight is according to the story. So it does sink by the weight of the engines first, which I thought was a nice touch, that they actually sort of thought to do that, and just rather than just have it sort of sink down. The rule of cool is the most important, yeah, and I think Derek Meddings and Mike Trim, and Reg Hill, certainly in the earlier stuff, had a great eye for this stuff, and the model makers, who were putting this stuff together. I mean, this was the first time anything in a science fiction show had actually, had any sort of surface detail or wear and tear shown on it. I think literally everything up until this point was just, gleaming and smooth, and, no panel lines, no details. Whereas, Thunderbird 2, as wonderful as it is, and it's this great, hey, it's international rescue, the best in the world, it still, gets dirty, and it's got all the little, markings on it that real planes have. I mean, it's but still on that sort of fantastic shape, which is such a, it just works so well. It's just a fantastic shape, but it's got enough little, bits of reality thrown at it. Even the way they make it fly. I mean, you take it for granted. Okay, it's a model. We know it's a model. We can tell it's a model. But they do a great job of just making it fly, and it comes into land with enough weight. And even when you see it take off on the ramp in those original shots, it goes off the ramp and it gets to the end and it just drops just a little bit, just like it's still building thrust. I mean, some of that was probably fluke, some of that was serendipity, just serendipitous stuff that just sort of happened. But they they were able to sort of mix fantastic, outrageous ideas, and then probably because it looks so outrageous, put so much effort into making the things look, believable, as put as many real world things, into it to sort of make it credible enough. No model airline, no modern. No, I don't know. Look as crappy and dirty as the Fireflash did, but it helps make it more realistic. Yeah. I mean, everything in Thunderbirds is filthy. It really is, and I think you can see. I think in Captain Scarlet and later on things are sort of less dirty, but But they look sort of more model-y in a way, to me, aesthetically to me, that they're a little, maybe a little sort of too clean or something. Again, they just look like they do what they're supposed to do. Like, you see the Firefly and it's pushing rubble around, and it looks like that's what it's really doing. It actually had a thing that went along and drove along and pushed things out of the way and catches fire and all the rest of it. I mean, it just and it just sort of it just all worked. It really worked. Yeah, Thunderbirds always look more lived in because of that. Yeah, it definitely looked lived in and believable. And one of the other things, is I think the fact that you do have some recurring, locations and recurring, hardware, those sort of half tracks that you see, in the desert, and then the famous little blue van that the Hood always uses when he's sabotaging something. The fact that there's those, they use those for the news reporting, and the fact that there's other sort of bits of and the phones, the video phones, is brilliant. They have kiosks of those things dotted around, which aren't always featured, but just things like that just sort of remind you it is a bit futuristic. A friend of mine actually said when he watched it, he goes, I never realized it was meant to not be in the 60s, because everything looks so 1960s, the cars and sort of the fashion and all the rest of it. Because I never realized it was meant to be futuristic. which I think is interesting, because that's not a story point really. It's only set a bit in the future, just so you can have stories with atomic powered airliners and rockets to the sun and all this stuff, without having to explain it too much, and that but the rest of it looks like the real world, to sort of, I think, just make it more credible, or make it cheaper. But I think it was. I don't think it was to make it cheaper, because they'd done sort of different sort of cars and things in Stingray and Fireball. I think they did. They wanted to have it as much look and feel like everyday life, where it was everyday life, so that then the cool stuff looked that much cooler. What question for, I don't know how many people we actually have on, but favorite, I guess, guest vehicle, aircraft, whatever, in Thunderbirds or any of the Anderson shows. Does anyone? Because everyone always says, "What's your favorite Thunderbird?" And we've covered that, but like, what's the other, the non sort of the episodic stuff? Exactly. The overall tone is that of the international style. Scientific optimist to the night. Oh, the mole. Yeah, the mole. Again, I mean, it looks like it does what it does. It was always interesting that the mole was in the end titles. Oh, apart from the first episode, it's in the end titles. So I don't know if they were expecting to use it more. It's only used in 3 stories. You see it in the Grand Houseman explosives truck. That's one of my all-time favorite designs. That thing just looks so great. It looks like it's designed to do exactly what it does. The fact that it has the 2, the sort of tracks at the front and the tracks at the back, is unique, and is so specific that it's like, okay, that's there for a reason. That helps it maybe drive over the sort of uneven ground that it's just blown up and disrupted, and boulders and stuff, even though you don't see it do that. But yeah, I mean, that is just a fantastic design, and I'm not surprised they used it, that model, for other things. It's used in some probe, and there's a fire truck version of it, which again is sort of suggests that it's probably in the real world of Thunderbirds. Yeah, maybe that is a regular sort of truck, in the world, and Brains or Jeff Tracy said, "Well, we'll get a couple of those, and we'll put our gear, on the back of it. We'll put our transmitter on it. But the actual truck itself is nothing special. It's just a cool, truck, the same one that Eddie Houseman bought, all the rest of it." Oh yeah, Mark recently acquired a box of that vehicle. Yes, yeah. It'd be a great kit. I mean, just getting into. But anyway, okay, well, great. I'm glad everyone sort of enjoyed this. I'll probably go back and watch the video again and see how it could be improved, made better, check whatever analytical stuff comes out of YouTube, and yeah, we'll put something together again in a few weeks and see how that goes. If you've got any questions, feel free to email me. Email me at matteline67@gmail.com, or do it through the website, the matteline.com website. There's a place there to contact me if you've got any other sort of questions. Don't put them in this chat box, because who knows, this will just disappear or never be found again somewhere. But anyway, that's it. Thanks very much, everybody. I think we're out of time, and this was fun, and I'll see you soon. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting the channel.